So here we are. We're going to discuss passwords and cybersecurity and go over the assignment related to passwords and cybersecurity. Passwords are really, I think, issue that's on the front of everybody's mind normally as we go through. We all have to log into certain accounts, certain software, log in, use your credentials to log in at work, wherever you may be. Log into your own personal computer, log into your iPad or tablet device. Passwords are everywhere, even on our mobile phones. It could be in the form of a swipe or facial recognition. That's essentially a way of giving you access to your device. But passwords and cybersecurity have this really sort of complex and long history because a lot of times people get access to your data through a compromised password. They can do that in a few different ways. They can guess a password if it's a simpler password, or more likely, if something is hacked, if a system is hacked, you'll see that people get thousands and thousands and thousands of different passwords that allow them to access your accounts because they hack a certain system which has these passwords stored. A lot of it has to do, we'll talk about cryptography and encryption later on in the course, but some people will store these passwords with no encryption whatsoever, and it ends up being really unsafe, and that's how your data is compromised because people have access to your password. So for this particular assignment, we're going to start just looking at passwords, your own personal passwords. Remember, we talked a little bit about cybersecurity, cyber story rather, in one of the assignments. So this one is just going to focus on your own passwords, what we can do, what we can look out for as far as passwords and the security around them. I'm going to go over the assignment. I'm going to go over through a few of the resources that are really useful for you to look at. For this assignment, though, we're actually going to create an infographic. So an infographic is really just a graphic representation of what you have learned, what you have found. Remember, we're going to use multiple modalities to sort of assess what you learn. And for this one, the infographic, we're going to use this a couple times as we do other modalities for assessment throughout the course. For this one, you're using this infographic, and there's a number of free options for you to use. It's really up to you which one you want to use. I'll show you some of the options as well once I start sharing my screen. So I'm going to share my screen real quick here and get into this assignment. So here we have, remember, we always go back to that CIA triad. They're really vital aspect of cybersecurity. We're going to talk about hackers and hacking and some of the methods they use to actually get passwords, get information about your passwords. The social engineering piece, which we talk about in another assignment, really plays into passwords and the cybersecurity around them. So we have a few resources in here just to start to talk about passwords. I'm going to share a little quote from one of the articles that I like as well to sort of explain what we're talking about. The first link is really from Michael McIntyre to YouTube video. Netflix, this guy's just a comedian on Netflix talking about how simple passwords used to be. And again, because of people hacking into systems and basically guessing these passwords, they become more and more complex. And now you see 8 characters, and you have to have things other than a letter, capital letter, lowercase letter, symbols. All these different things are meant so that they are not as easy to guess for hackers. But again, remember, that doesn't mean much if people hack into a central system and nothing's encrypted and they get all those passwords out of there. So there's positives to having a complex password, but we'll also talk about some of these resources and what they say about the complexity and the human nature. We'll always go back to that human nature around cybersecurity, human nature to actually remember a password. A colleague of mine once talked about passwords, and the one organization that he was with, they wanted to make sure that their system was super secure. So they had all their employees do a 20-character password so that it was really secure, and trying to figure out a 20-character password. And at the time, this was a little while ago, about 10 years ago. So at the time, the computing really wasn't able to even decipher these encrypted basically the passwords of that length. But what ended up happening is instead of them actually remembering a 20 character password, many of them wrote them down and had them on their phones, for example, so that they get access information on their phones. So they have a 20 character password that's really super secure, but they have to write it down. So if they lose any of their devices or somebody wanted to hack into their system, they could just look at the sticky note on their computer or on their phone or a device that they have there. So the human side will always be intertwined with this. This is a really fun thing about trying to remember passwords as they get more and more complex. And you'll see as we go through these resources what folks do. This is really meant to sort of challenge how you see passwords, the complexity of passwords, what goes into secure passwords, and what are even some of the dangers, even if you have a secure password. So this infographic, again, is about you looking through these resources and then putting down on a piece of paper, a digital piece of paper, your thoughts about what you found in these articles. So I'm actually going to click on, I think we have, here's an example of an infographic. And this one focuses on passwords, how not to get hacked. This is specifically about cybersecurity. And it tells you some of the things in here that you'll find in the articles as well. This is just one example. You don't have to do this, but this is an example of what you'd likely put together. So you see they have just 2/3 of people are just 2 passwords for all of their accounts. A lot of people may only have 1 password for all of their accounts. So what does that mean? You have 1 password for all of your account, and they figure out that password, they get into every one of your accounts. So again, the human side, that's easy to remember, but for hackers, that's a dream come true. But that's pretty crazy when you think about 2/3, and that's actually an accurate statement. So there's some cool facts in this in document, this little sample infographic. But you're going to actually create your own infographic, and you'll do that through one of these 2 sites, Easily, Infogram, Visually. I really like PictoChart, but they're all pretty good. And then you'll submit the infographic link as your assignment. So the first one that I showed you is that Michael McIntyre. It's just a warm up. It's a fun video to look at, just to talk about the complexity and how difficult it is to remember passwords. This article talks about everything you know about passwords could be wrong. And it goes into, they interview experts, and it goes into the human side of this. So remembering a complicated string of passwords is not the easiest thing to do. Therefore, people do what you just saw on that other slide. They'll use the same password for everything, or they'll use a password that looks like a word, but they'll put symbols in certain areas. Well, hackers are onto that stuff. So you really have to be careful about something that's not simple to figure out for a hacker, meaning not everybody's doing it, because the social engineering piece, they know what human nature is. They know that most of the time people use the same password for all their accounts. They know that most of the time they're going to use a password that's easily remembered, because people just don't have the capacity to remember complex passwords. So they know this already. So this goes sort of into everything around security, around what you need to know about passwords. It's got a video in there as well. So really good resource on sort of finding information about passwords and what's important to remember, specifically in the cybersecurity space. It does go into this and other articles, resources out there. Even if you have highly complex and secure passwords that you can remember, they're only as good as the organization that you have and how safe they keep those passwords. Are they encrypted, or are they in a data file somewhere that once it's accessed, it shows Joe, Mary, Sue, and their password right there without any encryption whatsoever? That's worse than having probably a simple password. So you really have to be careful as far as what measures your organization is putting into to protect their passwords. And depending on the industry, some industries are hit more than others. Oddly enough, education is actually hit as a pretty big target and hit very often as far as cybersecurity hacks and your password being compromised. So this is a really great article. This one talks about that even a complex password may not be the most secure. This quote right here uh, I really like. In some situations, a complex password can help you, but in others, like when the company holding your password stores it in plain text without encrypting it, that complexity is meaningless, which is what I just mentioned. And some passwords may seem complex, but they're actually easy to guess because uh, hackers study the psychology around this. Hackers study what most people use for their password. So we all are sort of humans in this big world, and we may think we're unique in a lot of instances, but most often we're actually doing what the majority of people are doing with our passwords, with the way we go about accessing information, whether it's complex or simple passwords. We do the same thing. We're not paying attention necessarily to the passwords in general. So it's a really good idea just to look through these and get a good idea of what it takes to have a secure password, but also look at the layers beyond just having a secure password and ask those questions of your organization. How is this stuff? Is this stuff encrypted behind the scenes? How easy is it to access the central database of all of our passwords as an organizational unit? Those are really cool things to look at and things that you can include in your infographic overall. And then we have 9 rules for strong passwords, how to create and remember your login credentials. A really cool article that just talks about different things you can use. There are password managers that you can use that are neat. Again, do your homework on which password manager you're using. Make sure it's not something that itself can be hacked and then people have access to all of your passwords. This says you could write your passwords down. If you do write them down, make sure it's in a really secure place that no one's going to be able to find, lift, or access in any way, shape, or form. You can find out if passwords have been stolen. There's a few sites in here. You have Mozilla's Firefox Monitor, Google Password Checkup. Google is actually really on top of even your own things that you sign up through Google. A lot of things you sign up through Google and Microsoft now. Flipgrid is one that we use here. It shows you if your passwords have been compromised. It shows you if they've been hacked or they are part of a data breach. Data breach, you'll hear a lot. Data breach means that you will, wherever your password was being stored, people breach that data, get access to all those accounts and the passwords that exist within those accounts, meaning they have access to any accounts that you have because they have your password to get into specific accounts. And that could be financial accounts, that could be your a personal account, your iTunes account, whatever it could be, any of these accounts. It could be if it was involved in a data breach. Have I been PWNED? That is actually a really good site that shows you if your emails and passwords have been exposed or used. I never say put your password in there, but you can put your email in there. And it's interesting to see if you put any of your email accounts in there, the email address in there, it'll show you if your email account has been in a breach, a data breach. And it's a really good check, and I recommend doing it for this assignment. Even we did the cyber story. It's a really cool thing to look at for cyber story as well, to follow up on that cyber story assignment rather. And it just gives you some longer passwords are obviously better. 8 characters is better. Remember, computers are getting faster. They can decode or get through the encryption of whatever password you have faster. We'll get into the cryptography piece of the encryption in another assignment, but it's becoming easier and easier for hackers to guess your password. So the more complex, obviously, the better. Using different symbols, characters, etc., is better. But again, remember, you have to remember it. And again, it's only as secure as your organization's encryption on the internal data servers. So just go through this. Two-factor authentication is really important too. It's not the end-all be-all. There's some drawbacks to that, as you'll see in some of the other articles. I'm actually going to go back to this one here. And you see, I just put that little quote from before in there as well. So again, for this assignment, look through these websites, look at some of the facts and considerations around passwords and cybersecurity. And you'll create an infographic around what you find to sort of do a graphic representation of what passwords and cybersecurity, some of the things you have to look at, some of the things that you need to be aware of, some of the statistics around it, some of the things that will make you safer or people safer in general with passwords overall. So again, have fun with this assignment. Use the infographic, any one of these infographic tools to create your infographic. You'll share that link in Coursera, that'll complete your assignment. So let me hit stop share. So that's about it for passwords and cybersecurity. A really big thing, a really big human piece of this. We'll talk later about hacking and the phishing and how people can grab your passwords and access your passwords and the clever ways that which they social engineer it down the road as well. So keep all of that in mind as you create this really wonderful infographic to pull all of what you found together and put it on one digital document. Have fun with it, and that's it for this assignment.